For over 10,000 galactic years, Earth had been categorized as a low-tier observation planet, a statistical anomaly orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The Galactic Council had long since written off Sol II as unstable, too tribal, too warlike, too primitive. Most council members had even forgotten why they quarantined it in the first place. A few hundred years back, the Vurnok had submitted a report. Species shows potential, but lacks unity. Recommend long-term isolation. The matter was archived and ignored. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. It began at Outpost RX 199, a deep space relay station manned by 3 Zhou-class intellects. Their job was simple: monitor background noise from uncivilized sectors. On rotation day 4421, something pierced the static. A single pulse, binary, precise, and ancient in its form. Greater than "we are awake now." The Zhou broadcast the transmission to Central Archives. Within 3 standard hours, it had been downloaded and decrypted by over 40 million species. But it wasn't just the words that disturbed them. Wrapped around the message were patterns, quantum irregularities that rewrote code at the hardware level. The encryption danced around firewalls, bypassed systems, and adapted on the fly. Council archivists who attempted to contain it failed. Some of them began experiencing dreams of alien places, rain-soaked cities, ancient ruins, children laughing in foreign tongues. The message hadn't just been heard, it had been felt. Panic rose in the outer colonies. Some claimed Earth had discovered a form of psychic broadcasting. Others believed they had tapped into dark matter signals. The truth was far worse. No one knew how they did it. A council emergency session was called, something that hadn't happened since the Silari cataclysm. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as ambassadors from every known species reviewed the transmission. The Vurnok representative, High Strategist Elkar, stood rigid. "This is not a call," he said flatly. "It is a warning." A younger ambassador from the Archean homeworld disagreed. "It's an invitation. They're not asking to join us. They're telling us they're ready and expect us to notice." But it wasn't until the humans responded again, just 1 standard day later, that the full weight of Earth's awakening hit the Council. The second signal didn't use sound, light, or code. It bent space-time around itself, arriving at every known listening station at once. There were no words in this one, just a vision. A star being born, a species clawing its way through war, disease, and hatred. A child standing in rubble, holding a broken robot. A billion hands building something impossible. And then, silence again. But now, the galaxy couldn't unsee it, couldn't ignore it. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council turned its full attention to a single world. Earth had spoken. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, was listening. The Galactic Council dispatched 3 emissary ships within the week, a rare unified vote. Speed was crucial, not for diplomacy, but containment. The Vurnok wanted Earth quarantined behind quantum veils. The Archean sought dialogue. The Xilari, ever curious, simply wanted to understand how a species once deemed infantile had just outmaneuvered the most secure network in the galaxy. The emissaries approached the Sol system cautiously. Probes swept ahead of them, expecting primitive satellites, fossil fuel-based tech, maybe crude orbital stations. Instead, they found silence and precision. Saturn's rings pulsed with artificial resonance, the listening field. Mars had become a mirror, its surface coated in reflectors, turning the planet into a vast lens. Earth itself was wrapped in a lattice of self-regenerating drones, orbiting in perfect synchrony like a heartbeat. Yet, no weapons powered up, no threats, no warnings. Just one message broadcast across every channel as they neared Earth's orbit. Greater than welcome. You are expected. The Archean ship was the first to descend. They were a graceful species, tall, silver-skinned, their bodies flowing like mercury. When they landed on Earth, They expected a formal delegation. Instead, they found a little girl waiting in a sunflower field. She offered them water and said, simply, "You're late." She led them to a structure called the Vault. The HFY arrived next, amorphous beings of light who relied on neural absorption to process information. As they hovered near the vault, the structure reacted, projecting massive archives in languages both alien and familiar, footage of the moon landing, the screams of Hiroshima, the first jazz recording, the collapse of glaciers, poems written by children, rage, beauty, madness, hope, raw, unfiltered humanity. The HFY reeled. One of them dimmed into non-function. It was too much, too fast. The Vernok landed last. Militaristic and reptilian, they viewed Earth through a tactical lens. Their instincts screamed, threat, not because of weapons, but because of restraint. No species hides power this well unless they know exactly what they are capable of. Inside the vault, the Vernok examined Earth's wars, their genocides, their endless spirals of destruction, and their recoveries. How do they survive themselves? The Vernok commander whispered. A voice replied, greater than by remembering every scar and never forgetting the cost. It was not a human who spoke, it was the vault itself, a sentient archive that had absorbed the psyche of billions. It spoke with the voice of soldiers, poets, orphans, and leaders, all at once. The emissaries left Earth deeply changed, some awed, some terrified, some confused. At the edge of the solar system, as they prepared to report back, a final message reached them. Greater than you came looking for a species, greater than what you found, was a mirror. Earth had let them in, not to prove power, but to expose truth. And now the question lingered like static in their minds as they jumped to hyperspace. What happens when the truth can't be contained? The council chambers boiled with conflict. The emissaries' reports were delivered in haste. The HFY described a species that had evolved beyond predictable psychological models. The Archene called Earth a living myth, dangerous and divine. The Vernok, however, were blunt. Humanity is the most advanced threat we've ever observed. Not in weaponry, in potential. Their restraint is not peace, it is patience. Fear gripped the chamber. The vote to embargo Earth passed swiftly. No contact, no trade, no alliance. A fleet was mobilized to patrol the system's perimeter. A planetary silence field would be deployed, cutting Earth off from the galactic web. It was a mistake. Back on Earth, they watched it all unfold. Every motion, every closed-door vote, every whispered panic broadcast across the stars. Earth's eye had long since slipped into the galactic archives, unnoticed, listening, learning, adapting. They had expected the rejection. In fact, they had prepared for it. Humanity's leaders gathered, not in bunkers or war rooms, but in a singular place that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. The Accord Citadel, a hovering construct orbiting the moon. Beneath its transparent dome stood presidents, dictators, tribal elders, hackers, philosophers, soldiers, and scientists. And for the first time in human history, they agreed. Not out of fear, but clarity. Earth would not ask for a seat at the table. It would build a new table. The Terran Accord was formalized in a single day. One charter, one voice, no borders, a temporary unification, designed not for control, but survival. Humanity had looked out into the stars and realized the truth. The galaxy wasn't wise. It was old, and it was scared. Within a month, Earth vanished from visual detection. The Council's probes found nothing but static and holographic echoes. Then, without warning, something happened that hadn't been possible for any known species. A tear in space-time opened in the center of the Council's grand chamber. Not a wormhole, not a quantum breach, something else, something deliberate. It didn't disturb gravity or collapse shields. It unfolded like a page turning in an unseen book. From that tier, a figure stepped forward. A man in a simple black suit, barefoot, eyes closed. He was blind. He carried a violin. Security forces froze. Scanners couldn't process him. He registered as both organic and artificial, alive and dead, present and displaced. Then he spoke softly. Greater than this is not an invasion. This is an introduction. He raised the violin, placed it beneath his chin, and began to play. What followed was not music. It was a memory. Not his, theirs. Each species heard something different. Some wept. Some screamed. Some collapsed in silence. A symphony tailored to their history, their traumas, their dreams. A song that spoke in emotion instead of language. And when it ended, the man bowed, smiled faintly, and said, "Greater than we are not asking. We are reminding. You were once like us." Then he stepped backward into the tear and vanished. The chamber was dead silent. Earth had broken through the embargo. Not with fire, but with a message they couldn't unhear. The council was fractured. Some species called for immediate retaliation. Others begged for time to understand. But none of them could deny what had happened. Earth had pierced the heart of their greatest stronghold without a fleet, without a shot, without even breaking the laws of physics as they knew them. The violinist had disappeared. No trace of his passage remained. But the song, the feeling, lingered. Overnight, diplomats across the galaxy found themselves dreaming of Earth. Not just its cities or people, but its essence. The taste of rain, the scream of birth, the silence of space. Earth hadn't sent a representative. It had sent an experience. And that terrified the Council more than any superweapon ever could. They had prepared for military dominance. What they encountered was psychological subversion, a species that had turned its trauma into empathy, its chaos into clarity, a civilization that could embed entire histories into moments of music, gesture, and light. The Xilari, who once believed only logic was truth, began building art installations based on visions they couldn't explain. The Viranok, proud warriors who mocked sentiment, suddenly paused when executing prisoners. Some found themselves hesitating, unsure why. Earth had changed something fundamental, not by conquest, but by reminding the galaxy what it had forgotten. The Council called for a second summit, this time in secret. One delegate from each race, off record, to discuss what Earth truly was. Humanity sent no delegate. They sent a question. Projected into the chamber through an ancient device called a film projector, a black and white image flickered on the walls. It was a human child, sitting alone in rubble, holding a book to her chest. Her eyes were wide, hollow. Text scrolled beneath her, translated into each ambassador's native tongue. Greater than, if you had suffered like we did, would you have survived? Silence. Then another image. An astronaut gazing at Earth from the moon. Then a hospice nurse holding a dying soldier's hand. Then a man giving his last ration to a stranger. Then protesters falling before tanks, hands raised. Then darkness. The projector stopped. In the stillness, a voice emerged, calm and precise, but undeniably human. Greater than, we do not come to rule you. We do not wish to remake you, but we see now that you are trapped, not by enemies, but by fear. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of what you once were, and what you could still become. Greater than, we conquered none of those fears. We learned to live beside them. And that is what made us powerful. Some ambassadors wept. Some sat stunned. But one, a junior delegate from a forgotten mining colony, stood and asked the question no one dared speak. Greater than, what does Earth want? The voice replied, simply, greater than a galaxy that remembers how to feel. With that, the message ended. Across the stars, revolutions began, not with blood, but with ideas. And for the first time, in 1,000 years, species long divided by caste, technology, or history looked at each other and wondered, could we become more like them? Tension cracked the stars. The council had split. On one side were the traditionalists, Vernok, Drekel, and 6 other militant species, who saw Earth's influence as a slow poison, a subtle corrosion of order. They demanded preemptive action. Before the infection spreads, the Vernok commander snarled. On the other side stood the awakened, species newly inspired by Earth's messages. The Archeme proposed a radical motion. Disband the old council and form a new union, one built not on seniority, but on adaptability and emotional intelligence. No middle ground existed. The fleets gathered. The skies near Sol became crowded with ships of all designs, some ancient, some newly minted for war. The Vernok flagship, Tyre's Verdict, arrived at Neptune's orbit, joined by dozens of war-hardened destroyers. They carried enough firepower to glass a dozen worlds. And yet, Earth's response was not what they expected. There were no defense grids raised, no planetary shields, no counterfleet. Instead, a single message was broadcast through every open frequency, greater than "we will not fight, but we will not hide. Come and see." Against their better judgment, the Armada moved forward. As they approached Earth, something impossible happened. Thousands of lights shimmered into existence above the planet. Not ships, not stations. Humans, standing in space. No suits, no tech, just people, hundreds of thousands, floating serenely, wrapped in luminous halos of stabilized gravity. Each one stared silently at the approaching Armada. And behind them, Earth turned slowly beneath a sky of fire and peace. The Vernok prepared to open fire, but something stopped them. The humans began to sing. No sound reached the ships, yet inside every vessel, in every species' native mind language, a chorus began. Not just heard, felt. It was as if every soldier, engineer, and commander had been pulled into a shared dream. A memory of childhood. A regret they never spoke. A lost loved one's face. A future they had stopped believing in. The Vernok admiral, hardened by centuries of war, dropped his weapon. Tears welled in his reptilian eyes. The chorus carried no threats, no demands, only understanding. It said, without words, "Greater than you do not need to be who they told you to be." One by one, ship systems powered down. Weapons dimmed. Fleets turned silently, drifting into stillness. Not because they were outgunned, because they were seen. From the bridge of Tyre's Verdict, the admiral gave a single command. Greater than stand down. Across the galaxy, word spread like wildfire. The war never came. Because Earth fought with something the galaxy had forgotten how to use. Grace. No empire had ever ended this way. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with stillness. The old council dissolved within a single galactic rotation. No resignations, no speeches, just silence. The council chambers, once bustling with diplomatic arrogance and rigid tradition, now stood empty. Holographic banners flickered out. Power no longer clung to seats. It drifted, uncertain, toward something new. And in the space where silence reigned, Earth stepped forward, but not to claim authority. The Terran Accord sent no rulers, no generals, no flags. Instead, they dispatched emissaries unlike any seen before. A blind poet, a child who spoke in dreams, a reconstructed soldier missing half his body, but with a heart that glowed like a star. They didn't command. They listened. And in doing so, they did the impossible. They healed. Fragmented worlds began to reconnect. Ancient grudges softened. Empires built on centuries of suspicion found themselves re-evaluating not their borders, but their beliefs. Humanity taught not through force, but by example. They opened the choral archives, sharing fragments of emotion encoded in song, art, and shared consciousness. With their help, the Xilari rediscovered their lost language of light. The Archean began sculpting again. For the first time in 6,000 years, even the Vernok, once rigid warmongers, invited human philosophers to help them rewrite their warrior codes. The galaxy was not conquered. It was reminded. Reminded that progress was never linear, that strength was not measured by silence, and that survival was not the same as living. In time, a new governing body formed, not a council, but a circle, rotating leadership, open communication, mutual evolution. Earth refused permanent leadership. "We are not your future," the Terran ambassador said. "We are your mirror. Use it." Her speech was recorded in every language and across every star system. It played in cities, villages, on distant moons and drifting stations. Greater than we were broken. We shattered ourselves 1,000 times over. But we chose to feel it all. Not to run. Not to erase. We built meaning out of madness. That is our power. That is our gift. Greater than. And if you let yourselves feel again, really feel, greater than you may find the galaxy is not dying. Greater than it's just waking up. Years passed. On a distant farming world once considered irrelevant, a young alien girl painted her home's walls with blue and green swirls. Her teacher asked what it was. "Earth," she said proudly. "The planet that sings." She paused, smiled, and added softly, "Greater than one day I'll go there, so I can learn how to dream." Above her, the stars pulsed, quieter now, gentler, no longer at war. Because when Earth spoke, it didn't demand obedience. It gave the galaxy back its soul. And this time, everyone listened.